Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 62. Well, this is it. The day has finally arrived when we can at long last can allow our first citizens to move into our new capital. We still need to take care of a couple things, which will mostly mean getting a couple more vehicles from the factory, setting up a couple more lines to deliver meat to the prison and to the 3 local stores in the city, as well as the commuter line for the heating plant. At the start of the video, we will be mere weeks away from the first snowfall, and to avoid disaster, I decided not to open the city until the weather warms up a bit. But once it does, it's open season for apartment hunters. To avoid people freezing to death during the next winter, I will also make sure that the local road cleaning services are in tip-top shape, including the one in Bobinski, and a new one that we will build in the warehouse district today. We will mostly spend the rest of the video beautifying the city, adding a couple monuments here and there, filling in 1 or 2 empty fields, and planting trees. Lots and lots of trees. The very first job we need to tackle is the coal deliveries for the heating plant. It won't be important in this video, but it will be a matter of life or death in the future. So we better make sure it gets done. For that, we need to electrify the rail tracks, at least until the point of the new heating plant. As I've said, we will need a couple more vehicles before we can open the floodgates. We had 2 small refrigerated trucks in the queue, but we have 4 buildings that need it in the city, so we need 2 more. We also added 2 more buses, because we have one of the local commuter lines without any right now. Also, thank you for reminding me that I really wanted to buy the plans for that Western bus model that can go at 105 kilometers per hour. They should be perfect for some high-capacity, long-range bus lines in the future. And right when the first snow falls, that fountain gets built, so we cannot really appreciate it, since the water pipes are frozen. Oh well, let's just add a bit of textures around it, and wait for spring. Next, we need to fix our heating system. I completely forgot how they need to be set up. We need 2 pipes for the pumping station's inputs, and 2 for the outputs. If we split a single input between 3 heat exchangers, that will only result in the water pressure dropping way too much. But if we go 2 for 2, then we can maintain useful temperatures all the way to the heat exchangers. We got a few extra breaks in these lines. At this point, I gave up on ever building these without accidentally adding one. We need 1 more line going into the second pumping station. And this time, the line is too long. No problem. Rearranging the pipes around the pumps should be enough to solve this issue. There we go. Let's make sure everything is connected, and let's start building. To ensure that we have clean roads during winters, we better add a local road maintenance depot. They are especially important to ensure production in the heating plant. If the minibuses slow down too much, they just might be enough to cause a disaster. Now, please excuse me while I reposition this depot a couple times. I want to make sure that the pavement lines up with the fire station zone. That should do it. It will of course need to be filled up with snowplows, so let's order them in the factory. We are close to finishing the rail branch for the coal deliveries. We can also start setting up the stations in the rail yard. Since the drop-off is inaccessible right now, we can only add the pickup in Ramosov. Since we have nothing better to do, let's go for a joyride. That's a lot of helicopters wasting fuel right there. And we can start delivering coal. The area is still not quite ready for prime time, so we will only allow one train into this area. The signals are still very much set up for construction. Again, we cannot really do anything until winter is over, so let's just enjoy the ride. Okay, let's load up on coal in Ramosov. I have no idea what caused this particular problem. There was nothing blocking the intersection and the signs didn't seem to be the cause either. Oh well, let's just teleport this guy home. Nice, we have coal waiting at the heating plant. One more obstacle conquered. Most of the consumer goods are already waiting to be distributed among the citizens. The only thing left is the meat. Adding that third train to the Autozov commuter line seemed to have really paid off. We have a lot of vehicles ready for job assignments, so let's not keep them waiting. I will let them refuel at the local gas station, and I will start assigning them in a second. In the meantime, we can start setting up the meat delivery lines in Mutigrad. This is where using a text-to-speech engine caused a bit of a spelling problem. In order to make Polly pronounce my alias correctly, I need to leave out the H, and now I sometimes spell it without it, especially when I write Mutigrad, like I did here. Once I notice it, I quickly fix it. That should be it. We only need 4 meat delivery lines right now. I'm fairly certain we will need more in the future, but that's it for now. We might as well let these buses loose on the city as well. They will need to start moving people between the different districts as soon as they move in. Which reminded me that the new vehicles should be ready by now, so let's start sending them out into the big wide world. First, let's start up the meat deliveries. They are the usual setup. Pick up at the warehouse freezer, and wait to be fully unloaded at the stores. We have the other 2 long haul freezers ready, so they can be added to the appropriate line. These 3 smaller haulers will need to go to the local distribution office, which will completely fill up the parking spaces. We have 1 more covered hull truck, so let's just add it to the temporary food deliveries. As for these microbuses, they will be moving workers to the heating plant, so let's set up that line too. Let's make the center of town the pickup point. Give it an appropriate name, and it's all done. Even the last 2 buses are ready to be released. They will need to be added to the last internal commuter line, so people can easily move between the districts. At this point, we only have the snowplows in the order queue. I have a feeling that they will be quite important during the next winter. These heating pipes are still not quite done. Helicopters are amazing, but they are a bit sluggish if they need to tackle big jobs without the help of road vehicles. And all the new vehicles are about to enter the city. They got here quite fast, especially if we consider the amount of snow on our roads. Let's just double check that all these lines have spacing enabled. Especially important for the temporary delivery lines, we need them to be quite regular. Here, I needed to add the next segments to continue building this branch. When I electrified the coal branch, I accidentally also put catenaries on that entire junction. We were still one whole month away from spring, so I decided to pass the time by beautifying the city a bit more. This empty area was perfect for a statue. Maybe a playground, so Uncle Lennon can watch over the children. Next up, a considerable amount of tree and bush planting. I tried to mix things up. Right now I'm placing acacia trees, which I've been neglecting until now. I've only been using beech and poplar trees as decoration until now, while pines were used to fill in the rural areas. I only ever used acacias in the city park. These poplar trees are perfect as centerpieces in relatively open plots of land, and they are of course the go-to when it comes to lining roads and streets. I also try to avoid placing them in front of the windowed faces of the different buildings. They grow very tall, they would block the view of a lot of people. And as I've said, these trees were used extensively as roadside decorative trees in the Soviet era. Placing a couple around the planetarium should make it blend into the park a little more. As you can see, I made sure to plant them in front of the non-windowed parts of that building wall. Giving the students a clean view of the city park will help remind them that they could be having fun, instead of listening to some boring lecture right now. This area is a bit bigger than usual. I will come back to it, and make it a bit prettier later. Same as with the other side, this place is perfect for some kind of a monument. Let's switch to beech trees now. They have a really big crown, so they should be used sparingly. We are going to have a lot of fires in the episode, and they will almost exclusively all happen in Valentinsk. Good thing we have a well-developed firefighting infrastructure. This roundabout could be made a lot nicer by adding a well-spaced row of bushes around it. I will use the usual method to ensure equal spacing. First place the ones on the edges, and then start dividing the space in between, splitting it in half each time, until we arrive at a density that we want. I ended up placing 5 bushes into each quadrant of the circle. And since we have the bushes on our cursor, let's just add them around the city as a finishing touch. We only need to make sure we don't get too close to the decorative ground textures. It wouldn't look nice if we had plants growing through our pavement. And winter is over. I will let the weather warm up a little bit more before I let people in though. It's still quite chilly. At this point, these pipes are pretty much only waiting for workers, apart from one last steel delivery. While we wait for warmer weather, let's fix up this big empty plot of land. Let's start with a fountain feature. We had two options for placement. Either line it up to the road intersection, or to the building. I went with the building. Giving it a nice asphalt texture around it will make it look less out of place. And it also allows us to place these completely cosmetic walkways, making the whole thing look like some kind of a plaza. We can also connect it up to the housing block. It doesn't look quite right though. Something's still missing. One of these small monuments will make it look more interesting. After making sure that helicopters can reach both construction sites, let's add the last piece of asphalt to complete the picture. Now it just needs a couple bushes and it's ready. Well, the temperature is now 15 degrees Celsius. I think we can at long last let the first people into the city. They are still complaining about it, but it will go away in a second. There. Now everything's fine. As usual, the citizens are trying to fill up the workplaces in walking distance before they even begin to think about going to the bus stop for work. And since the city center is full of buildings that have a lot of empty worker slots, it would take forever for anyone to wander in there. I will add workplace restrictions to one of the towers in a little bit, so some people are forced to get on the buses, so they can actually go to the heating plant. At this point, I just decided to open the whole city for everyone. We have 2 area name tags covering the place, and I enable resettlement on both. School coverage seemed to be more or less okay. We had a bit of an issue with culture and sports in this tower. Since they do have access to everything, these numbers should go down over time. I guess it was just a momentary hiccup, as people were still trying to decide where they will work on the first day. The new road maintenance depot is also finished, so we can start moving fuel to it. We had the usual happiness notification. They sometimes happen when 1 or 2 people move into a completely empty building. Once more moves in, the overall happiness usually quickly climbs to the national average. As expected, we have absolutely zero heating in the city. Simply nobody is going to the bus stop for work, since there is plenty to go around in the city itself. But since it wasn't an emergency, I decided to deal with the rail construction office instead. It should be in range for some of the new workers at this point, so I bought 2 new track layers for it. And as the first one walked in, one of them immediately sprung to life. Obviously, it will only work at a snail's pace with a number of workers I can count on one hand, but that should improve over time. What I should do in the next episode is lower the amount of workers in some of the buildings. Especially the TV station. Anyways, let's deal with the heating plant. I will give workplace restrictions to one of the towers. Basically, I just make sure that they can work anywhere they were already allowed to work before, but by adding them as mandatory destinations, that will ensure that some percentage of them will end up at the bus stop, regardless of how full the local workplaces are. And we already see a couple of them show up. Good. One of the towers cannot reach the hospital by foot. Not really a big deal, they should be able to take the bus, but by adding a couple more footpaths, it should lower the amount of people who do end up using our buses in the long run. And the heating plant is already operating at full capacity. Very happy to see it. As a secondary measure, we can tell the internal commuter line to treat the central bus stop as a transfer station. They will drop off workers there, so they can catch a bus going somewhere else. Also, I might be wrong here, so don't quote me on this, but I think I heard somewhere that if workers cannot get on a bus or a train, they will look for work around the station after a certain amount of time. So by dropping them off as a transfer, it should still allow people to work in the center, but only if no buses come to pick them up. Looking at this truck moving the bulldozer, I got reminded that I should look at how the snowplows are doing. Wow! We have a lot of them ready to go. Boy, am I glad I added that third train to the Autozov commuter line. Let's let them refuel, and then we can send them to their new homes. I know I could have just sent them straight from the factory, and avoided the whole refueling thing, but we are not in a hurry. Anyways, as I check on the different houses, the only complaints are the usual lack of religion and alcohol. Good times. The rail CO is still woefully understaffed. The only real remedy to this situation would be to get a couple people from the other cities, and forcibly relocate them to a nearby house. I might consider doing that in the next episode. Well, the snowplows are ready to go. I decided to fill up the Mutigrad depot first, and do the one in Babinski second. That one already has 2 ready to go, and there are very few roads they need to deal with around that part of the Republic. We have room for one more. I really like the way this roundabout turned out. Although, removing some of the bushes from the surrounding area should help it stick out a little more. And to replace them, we can just add a couple more poplar trees as roadside decor. We have a small epidemic. Not very serious, and not very contagious. Shouldn't be an issue. I kind of like that just looking at the photo helps to tell the severity. A nurse is not serious, a hazmat suit warrants more attention. Anyways, let's get back to planting trees, while our citizens settle into their new lives. It's too early to tell if the TV station had any effect on the loyalty of our citizens, but there is a very slight upwards trend emerging in the last month or so. It should speed up once more people start working at the station. We could give it a bit of a boost by adding this Red Star monument. It is our best one, in terms of loyalty increase, both for the amount and for the range. Finding a good place for it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be though. Next to the TV station would have been perfect, but there was no room for it. In between these towers, overlooking the football pitch would be quite good too. Let's make sure the pavement is even on both sides. This tower had some issues because of the lack of childcare. Let's make sure we deal with the situation. It seems the city is handling the new inhabitants admirably. We might as well order the remaining vehicles for our service buildings. We need 3 more ambulances, 4 patrol cars, and 4 personal cars for the secret police. And we have 3 snowplows we can send over to Bobinski. As I've said, they will not be as important at that location, so if we see some of them sitting idle during winter, we will know that we can send them somewhere else in the future. Also, as more and more people move into the city, the amount of workers ending up at the rail CO keeps going up. Now that we have a local railroad construction office, we can tell the old one to continue working on the cross-country tracks. Now, let's talk about the next episode. As you might have heard in the last video, the community has reached a decision. We will deal with the water system in a new way. I will sit down and spend a couple hours putting together everything we need for a working water and sewage infrastructure in between episodes, and enable construction notifications on some of the more important or noteworthy things. I will not advance the game time, I will only place down the buildings, pipes, and other stuff we need. We will deal with the actual construction during the normal recording, and as we get those construction notifications, I will pause the game and explain why I did what I did. Hopefully, we can do all that in Friday's episode. That will not be the only focus of the episode though. Now that we have the new city getting more people every day, we can turn our attention to the new chemical plants, and we can also start thinking about some new factory zones. Something that might be worth considering is a complete checkup on the state of our industries, and building new manufacturing centers for things that we are about to run out of. For example, we have only 2 clothing factories supplying our citizens right now. I'm not sure if it's enough, so we will need to check. At least I can be fairly certain that our steel production capacity isn't going to be inadequate anytime soon, thanks to Alexandergrad still being on standby. Anyways, I hope you liked the video. If you did, you can support me on Ko-fi, for which you can find a link in the description. If you are not the donating type, that is fine too, you can still support me by leaving a like, or subscribing to the channel, which just might motivate me to make more. Until then, see you later.